Welcome to the Pantheon Parenthetical. My name is Lance Ash, and for this, my 50th episode, I have chosen my hometown of Athens, Georgia, as the theme. I say my hometown because that's where I was born, although in actuality I have lived 99% of my life just outside of Athens. I did live in Athens for a couple of months when I was, 19, 20, something like that. Now, Athens is known around the country, around the world, mostly for being the originating place for bands such as REM, the B-52s, Pylon. Do you remember Dream So Real? And I was surprised to find that they are, or Athens is home to Maserati, which is the band I've been getting into lately. Sort of a spin-off band of Touring Machine, which I've also been getting into. But I was too young to be a participant or observer of that scene when it was hot. Or indeed, even if I had been old enough, I wouldn't have been part of it because, first of all, live music is just not my thing, especially not rock music. And nobody would ever be in a band with me. And anytime I have seen a band live, my only thought is jealousy that I'm not doing it. I'm not the one on stage. When I was a little kid, downtown Athens was dominated by several large department stores. And these were Belk's, which is a southeastern chain of department stores, and JCPenney, and a store called Davison's, which was in the old Michael Brothers building. Michael Brothers was a department store back 100 years ago or so. And there was also Sears, but it was a couple of miles outside of downtown. Still close enough to be considered part of, I don't know, the downtown area. Anyway, around 81 is when they built the mall, several miles outside of town, and those four stores all moved out there. And the prediction was that it was going to be the death of downtown. However, in the event, all these small, independent, quirky shops moved in, took over, and it really revitalized downtown. I used to love going to those department stores when I was a kid, especially Davison's in the Michael Brothers building. It was just a beautiful old building, in Belk's, the elevator was so old that it was still operated by a person. There was a lady in a uniform that sat on a little stool in there and ran the elevator all day. When I got old enough to drive, I started hanging out downtown more and going to a lot of these weird shops, eating at places that my parents would never go to because they were just too grungy looking. Now Athens is changing it again because all these big name corporate stores are coming in and they've put up all these large apartment buildings that are changing the look and the feel of downtown. You can't talk about Athens without mentioning the University of Georgia. Right in the heart of downtown Athens is College Square. That's where College Avenue runs across Clayton and abuts, or whatever the right word is, Broad Street. Broad Street bisects the town with downtown on one side and the old part of the university campus on the other. And I'm always encouraging the people I work with in Atlanta to go visit Athens. I'm surprised at a number of them who don't know anything about Athens, have never visited. It's a beautiful town. And the campus is beautiful. You can park downtown and walk across Broad Street and step through the arches, which is this metal gateway to the oldest part of the campus, and you can walk for 2 solid hours and be constantly delighted by everything you see. The attention to detail, the care that has been put into the landscaping and the planning of all the vegetation around the buildings. You can just walk and flip a coin and turn randomly left and right, and you'll find flower beds and statuary and fountains and sundials and all sorts of just beautiful things. It's places to sit and read, and the buildings are beautiful. If you go on a weekday when all the buildings are open, you can wander around inside and it's just a fantastic place to go. I guess you can hear it's raining. I'm trying to keep an eye on my driving while I'm doing this. I feel weird today. I don't know. My mind is all in a confusion. Now, trying to think. Yeah, College Square is where the original Varsity restaurant was back in the 70s. It moved down the road, I think in 72, to a building unto itself. It's where the chocolate shop used to be. It's where Ruthless Records used to be. It's where Shaw's Factory Reject clothing store was. What else used to be over there? Anyway, now there's a Starbucks there. That tells you everything you need to know. Don't want any dead air here, but I'm drawing a blank. Ground penetrating radar. I don't understand why it's not ground penetrating sonar. Seems to me that would make more sense. You can't paint someone in a corner who doesn't give a damn about making a mess. In the Tom Petty song, You're Jamming Me, he says, you can keep me painted in a corner. But you can't. You can paint yourself into a corner because you're the one who's, for who knows what reason, painting the floor, and ostensibly don't want to make a mess. And so you're stuck there till the paint dries. But if you paint someone else into a corner, they're just going to get mad and walk through the wet paint and make a mess everywhere. Alright, so what I have to say, or what I have to discuss on this, the second part of the episode, is the song Yellow Submarine. That's our starting point. In the song Yellow Submarine and in the movie, the animated film based on it, the idea of the Beatles, ideas presented of the Beatles living together, as if they were a family or a group of best buddies. And I think, for me, that's a continuation of the image presented in Help. I'm pretty sure they were all living together in Help, right? But it's a continuation of the phony image that Help presented. Hard Day's Night was a little bit exaggerated, but it was more true to the real situation. However, it's a recurring fantasy of mine that I can step into movies and deal with things that bug me in the films. And in Hard Day's Night, it's always irritated me when they're on the train, and when the guy playing their manager tells John Lennon, "You leave those girls alone or I'll tell your mother on you." I always wanted Lennon to turn to him and say, "My mother's dead, jackass. If you were really our manager, you'd know that. And you'd know how touchy I am on the subject." Stuff like that. Anyway, so I got to thinking about the idea of a band living together, and they're, all comrades. And for an updated version of Yellow Submarine, I was trying to think of a band that could pull that off, and the only one I could think of, a modern band, current band, is Rammstein, because they present the image that they're all pals, and they're all a band of brothers, But I was trying, obviously it wouldn't be, I don't want them to do a new version of Yellow Submarine. It'd be a totally different song, but it would be a submarine. I couldn't think of a color. So I thought, well, obviously it would be a texture instead. And I think Hairy Submarine would be the best choice for them. So they do a song called Hairy Submarine, in which they describe the situation of them living on this submarine. And so for the film, they're in the Hairy Submarine, and they're going on an adventure. And so they would, instead of going through the sea of holes, they'll go through the sea of squares. So it's two-dimensional instead of three. However, it would be CGI instead of traditional animation. And here's where the film also turns into a twisted version of the film version of Sgt. Pepper. What a horrible film that was. So, in the film, Rammstein is hot on the trail of some unseen enemy, some behind-the-scenes menace that's been pulling the strings and making everything go bad. And just as in the movie Sgt. Pepper, at the end, when they confront the enemy, it's another band. In the film Sgt. Pepper, it's Aerosmith playing under a different name. And when they confront them, they're playing Come Together. But in our Hairy Submarine movie, when Rammstein confronts the other band, it's Ghost. I don't know what name they'd be playing under. And they wouldn't. I don't know what song they'd be doing, because I don't want them to do a Beatles song. Think about that. But I love the idea of them getting in a fight, and Till Lindemann punches Papa Emeritus. And when he does, he looks at his fist and it's covered with black and white makeup. Schminke auf dem Faust. And the other members of Rammstein fight the nameless ghouls, and they pull their masks or helmets off, and it's like maybe well, you could keep in keeping with the Year Zero video idea. It's women under there, maybe famous women. I don't know, it'd be interesting. Maybe Angela Merkel was one of them. Huh. So, yeah. The film version of Sgt. Pepper is so bad. There's a story, I guess it's true, that John Lennon was on a plane, and the in-flight movie was Sgt. Pepper, and he had to sit through it, and it was misery for him. And then the plane got stuck in a holding pattern because he couldn't land, and they played the movie again. What an embarrassment. The worst part of that whole movie is the Steve Martin singing Maxwell's Silver Hammer scene. It's absolutely horrible. And George Burns, Jesus, can you imagine your whole public image is being old. I'm old. I'm not dead. That became his thing. In the mid to late 70s, when he had that career revival, it was just, oh, here's somebody who's still alive. I just never saw what the point of him was. Oh my God, what a bad movie. The poor Bee Gees. God knows how much money they paid them to do that. And then they stick them with Peter Frampton. It's such a colossal 70s train wreck. I lost it with Steve Martin a long time ago. When I was about 7 or 8, Steve Martin had a TV special in which one of the running gags throughout this program was that he would knock on somebody's door, and when they answered the door would open, he'd be standing there and he'd say something funny. Well, there was one of these, they opened the door and he's got 2 plants coming out of his nostrils. And he says, "Hello there. Do you have trouble growing things out of your nose?" And I laughed so hard I couldn't breathe. And that, to me, that started me just thinking Steve Martin was the greatest thing in the world. But slowly, over time, he started doing just bad movie after bad movie. Just wrong choices. I thought Leap of Faith was a pile of crap. Father of the Bride, part 1, 2, 3, 4, however many he did. And taking on the Inspector Clouseau role? What is wrong with him? I think what happened was, with him, instead of being a good entertainer, being funny, his raison d'etre became, I want everyone to know that I'm smart. Pathetic. For me, Athens has been, the guy beside me wants to race. He's pissed off that I'm driving a Prius. It's an insult to his American masculinity. Anyway, long time ago I saw Henry Rollins speak, and he said he loved coming to Athens because it was an oasis of culture in the middle of this wasteland of the South, and he's right. Where I live, it's just chicken farms and red mud and pine trees. And if you want to go to a restaurant or buy clothing or buy groceries or do anything, you have to go into Athens. So when my kids were little and we would take them trick-or-treating at Halloween, we wouldn't trick-or-treat in our local area. We'd drive into Athens. And there's a specific little neighborhood we would go to. And I'll tell you some of the things I miss about the way Athens used to be. The main thing is, about 26 years ago, I think it was, they built the new library. And it's bigger than the old one, but for me, it's not as charming the way that it looks. When I was 10 or 11 years old, my mother would drop me off at the library for a couple of hours by myself while she and my sister went and did some errand. I can't imagine doing that with my children when they were 10 or 11 today. But anyway, it was just such a treat to be able to be at the library by myself and just wander around and discover things, you know. And I miss the old movie theaters that used to be downtown. There's the Georgia Theater, which is not a theater anymore. It's a venue for bands. It hasn't been a theater in years. But there was also the Triple and was it the Classic or the Palace? I can't remember. The Triple was red brick, and it had 3 movie theaters in it. One of which was a narrow, skinny theater with just one aisle right down the middle, with 2 narrow rows of seats on either side. And the other one, was the Classic or Palace or whatever, in the lobby, they had these creepy monochrome murals on the walls. One was Marilyn Monroe, one was Charlie Chaplin, and the third one was this unknown, indefinable thing. I don't know what it was. And I asked one of the guys there who it was supposed to be, and he said, "We don't know. Nobody here knows. Our suspicion is that it's Abby Hoffman." Anyway. Well, the rain is coming down pretty hard now, and I need to concentrate on my driving, so I don't know if we've reached the 25-minute mark yet or not, but, oh, there's a cop behind me, too. I gotta pull over. Alright, that's the end of the episode. Thank you very much for listening.